Aloha and welcome to this final screencast of the Bootstrap Example Intro repo. In this one we're going to look at, so far, basically been showing you all variations on this kind of hello world-ish type page. Not that interesting, although, I'm doing it exactly that way to kind of give you just a little bit of changes each time. Okay, now we're going to look at a repo that is it's actually not that much different from this, truth be told, but it's going to look a lot different. So let's bring it up. It's called the Theses Are Us site, and let me expand a little bit so you can see what it looks like. Okay, there it is in all its glory. Theses Are Us. I tried to think of, well, what's a one-page example of something that would, be appealing to every graduate student, and I thought, maybe you're entrepreneurial. Here's a great idea. Create a full-service thesis delivery company, designs your thesis for you, does all the research for your thesis, even comes to your defense for you for a small charge. Okay. So anyway, I made up this company and made up a website for it, and I think it's a reasonable way to kind of get a sense for what a more interesting bootstrap-based environment might look at. So let's go back into IntelliJ, and just by clicking here, since I've switched to this branch, we can see that everything's all updated. Okay, so let's go through this code a little bit so you can see what's going on. The first thing to note is if we look at our the bootstrap that we're loading the simplex theme from Bootswatch. So that was kind of our base theme. The base theme that I chose, that essentially gave us this red nav bar and the font, which is an Open Sans. And then these other colors I kind of semi-arbitrarily created to give a little bit of visual color. Again, I'm not quite sure whether this is like the most visually gorgeous site ever, but whatever. And then if we look at our style.css, we can see that there's actually quite a few CSS style changes. And in general, even if you're using Bootstrap, there's going to be times where you're going to want to make changes to the margins, changes to the colors, changes to the font size. And this site enables you to see examples of all this. Now this is a site where it really is going to help you to play around with some of these definitions and make changes and see what happens. When you delete like this padding of 100 pixels, what happens when you delete that? Okay, what is the keystroke to delete a line in IntelliJ? Well, it's Command Delete is a delete a line. So, and then Propeller Z command. I say propeller for the Mac, but Command Z is the way to to put it back. So we could place the cursor here. We could say Command Delete, save out the file, and that's what that padding actually did for us, is to make that background image a little bigger. I can do Propeller Z, bring it back, and all of a sudden we're back to where we were. Okay? So go through and make sure, like this section H1, well, why is that little H1 there? Why are these two things here? Well, delete the H1 and make sure you understand what the effect of it is. It's one of the best ways to actually learn, I think, how CSS works is just, delete and see what changes in the presentation. Okay, anyway, back to the index. What you can see is we have our basic responsive navbar. This is the stuff that we want to change the enumerated list. Okay, with a home, about, and contact, and in fact this time it actually works. So if we actually make this mobile size and then we pull it down, we say about, you can see that it actually moves to this particular section. Why? Because we're using over here in IntelliJ, you can see there's the anchor about in the list, and then we have this name tag, or the anchor element, down here in section 2 with the same name. Okay, so that's hopefully very simple HTML that you know about. This is a link that's going to link to this anchor element. Similar down here, we have an anchor element for contact. Okay. Okay, what else can I tell you about this? So we basically what we did is what I did is create 3 divs. Okay, a div for the first section, a div for the second section, and a div for the third section. Okay, and then in style.css, I created classes. I'm sorry, I didn't say that correctly. There was a div with a class for the first section, a div called section 1. There's a class section 2 that surrounds the second part of the site, and a class called section 3 that surrounds the third part. We go to style.css, we can see here's the definition of our section 1 class. Okay, and we want a background of gold. We have a background image, theses-are-us.jpg. The background size is going to cover the area, and there's padding of 100 pixels. That makes it a little taller. And then the H1 within section 1, we've changed the size of it and the color of it, because in fact in other sections we're going to be using H1 as well, and so we want to make sure that only the H1 within section 1 is being affected by these set of definitions. We're using that khaki color, and you can see we use the gold color up here, the khaki color down here. What's nice about IntelliJ is that if you look in the margin, you can see it actually displays for you the color that you've just defined there. So that's just one of those little nice things IntelliJ does for you, just out of the goodness of its heart. Okay, so anyway, this section 1 is welcome to Theses Are Us. It's right here. We could change it just to you are so welcome to Theses Are Us, and because we have live reload going, that updates itself right away, but we won't do that anymore. And section 2, here's an example of a more kind of normal use of the rows and the grid system in Bootstrap. Here we have 3 call medium 4s, okay, adds up to 12, which is what we want. We use the well class in Bootstrap, and then well color is probably defined here, okay. So we have the background color is khaki, and the padding is 40 pixels to kind of make a nice edge on that. Again, if you do a command delete and save it out, you can see the result of that, which I don't think looks as good, so we can put it back in and make it look the way it started. Okay, so in general, I don't consider myself an awesome designer from the kind of visual arts perspective, and I'm not requiring you guys to be awesome designers, but I still think that with these tools at your disposal, you should be able to come up with relatively reasonable looking designs for your software, which is all we really want. Okay, so that's the three columns in this middle section, and then we've got the footer here, which is section 3, and if we look in the style.css, you can see this stuff right here. Okay, now one thing, when you're trying to understand how things work, again, it's very useful to use the Chrome developer tools, okay, which shows you things like what's being defined. You can see we're overriding the font size that comes in Bootstrap right here with our own custom font size, okay, and then this little guy is super nice. So if we click on the little magnifying glass, we can go to any section of the site, and if we click on it, it takes us to that spot and kind of shows us what's going on. So this is something that we'll be doing a lot of over the course of the semesters, using Chrome developer tools to kind of understand what the heck is going on with our CSS. Really, it's impossible to figure it out without some kind of inspector. I mean, you can look at this stuff, and deleting and reinserting gives you some idea, but another really important way to understand what's going on is simply selecting an element and then going to inspect element and then seeing what what things are in place, and again, if you look at some of these other pieces of it, it gives you a lot of additional information as well. Okay, so that I think is the theses are us. I would go ahead, make some changes, make sure that you understand, why all these things are here. Replace all these values, refresh, see what happens. Okay, again, if you've got live reload installed, it's way less, onerous to do any of this stuff, because all you have to do is just save out the file and your browser will be updated automatically. Okay, so that's Thesis R Us. Enjoy, and I'll see you around.